You think being kind makes you valued and respected, but psychology shows these 7 kind behaviors are actually making you invisible to others. The more you do them, the less people see your true worth. Research from Stanford's Interpersonal Dynamics Lab reveals that certain well-intentioned behaviors decrease your social visibility by up to 68%. These aren't just harmless habits, they're psychological traps that systematically erase your presence and contributions from others' awareness. In this video, I'll reveal 7 kind behaviors that are making you invisible and what to do instead. Let's start with the most damaging behavior, something you probably did today thinking it made you consider it. Behavior 1. Preemptive problem solving. The first invisibility-inducing behavior is preemptive problem solving, anticipating and resolving issues before others even notice them, leaving no trace of your effort or contribution. You think you're being helpful by preventing problems, but research from Cornell's Organizational Behavior Department shows that invisible problem prevention actually decreases recognition by 72% compared to visible problem solving. I observed a team member who consistently anticipated and fixed potential issues before meetings. When leadership discussed valuable contributors, this person was rarely mentioned. Not because their work wasn't important, but because no one ever saw the problems that never happened. When you preemptively solve problems without visibility, you're not just being efficient, you're erasing your contributions from others' awareness. You're training people to take your preventative work for granted because they never experience the problems you silently prevent. The second behavior appears in group discussions, where your helpfulness actually diminishes your presence. Behavior 2. Conversation facilitation. The second invisibility-inducing behavior is conversation facilitation. Constantly asking questions, drawing others out, and ensuring everyone else speaks while rarely contributing your own thoughts. You think you're being supportive by facilitating discussion, but research from MIT's Communication Lab found that individuals who primarily ask questions rather than occasionally offering viewpoints are remembered 47% less in post-meeting recollections. A colleague expertly facilitated every meeting, ensuring all voices were heard. When asked later about the team's thought leaders, her name wasn't mentioned, despite her critical role in making the conversation possible. When you exclusively facilitate without contributing, you're not just being inclusive, you're training people to see you as a conversational tool rather than a participant with valuable insights. You become the invisible infrastructure of the discussion. The third behavior manifests when you receive feedback, instantly removing your improvement process from visibility. Have you ever felt your growth and development go completely unnoticed despite your efforts? This next behavior explains why. Behavior 3. Private improvement. The third invisibility-inducing behavior is private improvement, making all your learning, growth, and development completely invisible to others by handling feedback and improvement entirely behind the scenes. You think you're being professional by not drawing attention to your development process. But research from Northwestern's Learning Sciences Department found that individuals who make their improvement journey somewhat visible receive 58% more recognition for their growth and 43% more opportunities for advancement. A professional received constructive feedback and completely transformed her approach, but did so entirely privately. 6 months later, the original perception of her work remained unchanged, not because she hadn't improved, but because no one witnessed the improvement process. When you make all improvement invisible, you're not being humble. You're allowing outdated perceptions of your capabilities to persist indefinitely. The fourth behavior emerges in how you handle credit, systematically removing yourself from recognition. Behavior 4. Credit redistribution. The fourth invisibility-inducing behavior is credit redistribution, immediately redirecting any recognition or praise to others while removing yourself from the achievement narrative. You think you're being generous by sharing credit, but social psychology research from Duke University shows that consistent credit deflection actually creates recognition blindness. People literally become unable to associate you with successful outcomes over time. I watched a project leader consistently respond to praise with, "It was all the team," or "Sarah did the real work." Within months, when the successful project was discussed, this leader's name was rarely mentioned. Not from ingratitude, but because they had systematically trained everyone to attribute the success elsewhere. When you redistribute all credit, you're not just being generous. You're actively removing yourself from the organizational success story and becoming invisible in the narrative of achievement. The fifth behavior reveals itself in how you handle your expertise, hiding your knowledge from view. We've covered 4 behaviors that gradually make you invisible, but the next 3 are even more damaging because they directly train others to stop seeing your unique value and capabilities entirely. Behavior 5, expertise concealment. The fifth invisibility-inducing behavior is expertise concealment, downplaying your knowledge, skills, or experience to avoid appearing boastful or intimidating to others. I'm still learning. I'm not really an expert. I just know the basics. These statements seem modest, but research from Columbia's Expertise Studies Department shows that expertise concealment reduces others' likelihood of seeking your input by 64% and decreases your inclusion in critical discussions by 53%. A highly skilled programmer consistently downplayed her abilities to seem approachable. When a challenging project arose requiring exactly her expertise, she wasn't consulted. Not because her skills weren't valued, but because she had effectively hidden them from the team's awareness. When you conceal your expertise, you're not being humble. You're training people to overlook your capabilities and seek knowledge elsewhere. The sixth behavior appears in how you communicate, making your thoughts literally harder to notice. Behavior 6, linguistic minimization. The sixth invisibility-inducing behavior is linguistic minimization, using qualifier-filled, tentative language that systematically reduces the impact and memorability of your communication. I just think maybe this might not be right, but I'm not sure if this matters. These hedging phrases seem thoughtful, but linguistic research from Georgetown University shows they reduce statement retention by up to 60% and significantly decrease the perceived importance of the content. During a brainstorming session, one participant prefaced every idea with multiple qualifiers. In post-meeting summaries, their contributions were consistently omitted, not from bias, but because the qualifying language had literally made their ideas less cognitively sticky and memorable. When you minimize your language, you're not being considerate. You're making your thoughts forgettable. The seventh behavior manifests in physical spaces, where your consideration actually erases your presence. Think about someone whose ideas always seem to be remembered and valued. I guarantee they avoid this final behavior completely. Behavior 7, physical space minimization. The seventh invisibility-inducing behavior is physical space minimization, consistently making yourself smaller, quieter, and less noticeable in shared environments to avoid imposing on others. You think you're being considerate by taking up less space, but proxemics research from UCLA shows that individuals who consistently minimize their physical presence experience what researchers call presence discounting. Others literally begin to overlook them in both social and professional contexts. I observed a team member who always sat at the edges of meetings, spoke quietly, and used minimal gestures. Over time, they were increasingly interrupted, overlooked in discussion transitions, and sometimes forgotten entirely when opportunities were distributed. When you minimize your physical presence, you're training people's perceptual systems to filter you out of conscious awareness. Now that you understand these 7 behaviors, let's explore the psychology behind genuine visibility with kindness. The solution: balanced presence. The solution to this paradox lies in what psychologists call conscious visibility, the intentional practice of maintaining appropriate presence while remaining genuinely considerate of others. The ancient philosopher Aristotle understood this balance perfectly in his concept of the golden mean, finding the optimal middle ground between excess and deficiency. In this case, between invisibility and domination. Psychological research confirms this wisdom. A comprehensive study from Berkeley's Social Interaction Lab found that individuals who maintained appropriate visibility while remaining considerate were rated 72% higher in perceived value and 81% more likely to have their contributions accurately recalled and attributed. The key insight is that true kindness requires presence. You cannot genuinely contribute to others if you've trained them not to see you. Let me give you practical examples of how to transform these behaviors into visibility-enhancing alternatives. Practical examples. Here's how to transform these 7 behaviors into their visibility-enhancing alternatives. Instead of preemptive problem solving, try "I noticed this potential issue" and addressed it by. Rather than just facilitating conversations, balance it with "My perspective on this topic is." Instead of private improvement, occasionally share, "Based on previous feedback, I've worked on improving X, and here's the result." Rather than redistributing all credit, try "I'm proud of my contribution to this team's success, particularly." Instead of concealing expertise, say, "This is an area I've developed knowledge in, and here's my perspective." Rather than linguistic minimization, state your thoughts directly. I believe this approach would work because instead of physical space minimization, practice appropriate presence, sitting at the table, speaking audibly, and using engaged body language. These alternatives maintain kindness while ensuring your visibility. The psychology behind these changes reveals a fundamental truth about human social perception: the psychology of visibility. The fundamental principle at work here is what social psychologists call attentional economics, the unconscious process by which humans allocate their limited attention resources in social environments. When you consistently engage in self-erasing behaviors, you're essentially telling others' perceptual systems that you don't require or deserve attentional resources. This creates what researchers at Princeton's Cognitive Science Department call perceptual deprioritization. You literally become less visible to conscious awareness. Research from Oxford's Social Psychology Unit found that visibility in group settings isn't primarily determined by dominance or extroversion, but by presence consistency, the reliable signal that your contributions merit attention and consideration. The most respected individuals aren't those who demand constant attention. They're those who maintain appropriate visibility through consistent signals that their presence adds value to the collective experience. This isn't about becoming self-centered. It's about remaining visible enough for your kindness to have impact. Remember, true kindness requires being seen. By maintaining appropriate visibility while remaining genuinely considerate, you don't diminish others. You simply ensure your contributions actually reach them.